Good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be back on stage. Are we ready to be starting here? Okay, so thanks for having us back here. It's really a pleasure to be back at launch. For those of you who are new to Boxbee, what we do in a nutshell is we help businesses and consumers easily deliver their stuff to storage, and when they need their items back, we provide on-demand storage and on-demand delivery right back to them. We do this with a very simple to use but very powerful online interface where people can basically manage their physical worlds. So we've logged in here, and you can see an array of boxes, and each one of them corresponds to an actual physical item that someone has in storage. And notice our friend here has done a good job of labeling all of his items with pictures and descriptions and tags, etc. And this really allows him to start controlling his items in his physical world very selectively. So we're in the In Storage tab right now, and our friend Nate has a party on Saturday that he's inviting some friends out to. So he makes these kitchenware items available to his friends by having it delivered on Friday evening. And they get delivered right away. And if we go over to the App My Location tab, we can see what items that Nate has already ordered from storage, and they're sitting around at his house. He's tired of having those items sit around, so he selects all of them and schedules a pickup for them to get out of his hair tomorrow morning before he even goes to work. So going back to the presentation here, I've explained Boxbee as you've known it, and let's talk about what's new. Over the last year or so, we've raised a round of funding. We built a very large team, and we've expanded to a new market. In fact, you can see from the heat maps here our user density in our pilot city of San Francisco, as well as our newest city, New York. We learned a lot in this process, including how to successfully do a rollout in New York City, in any new city for that matter, and appreciate the differences in marketing, culture, and advertising in these cities. So moving on, another really exciting item that we unveiled over the last year is the ability to share your stuff in storage with your friends, colleagues, and customers. Nate, for example, loves to go into the woods on the weekend to go camping. He loves the camping gear, but it's rather expensive. So he and his friends split the cost of all the items, all the camping gear, and they store it in Boxbee for a low monthly fee. And this weekend, Nate's kind of busy, but his friends will be going camping, so he goes ahead and selects a few of his camping gear and shares it with his friend Alex. Simply by typing in Alex's email address, and they go directly to Alex's address. They get delivered right away without him even having to interact with Nate. Likewise, Nate can also log in and see what his other friends have shared with him. Boxbee, in the spirit of sharing, has made items from our own sharing library available to customers as well. So going back to the presentation, I've talked to you about what's new, and I've told you how we've taken something like self-storage that's normally associated with this static place where your stuff goes to die, and we turn it into something much more dynamic and actually useful to society. Going forward in this presentation, I really want to explain what happened in between and really the major challenges that we had to go through as a company, namely 3 big challenges. And the first one was building security and trust. We were dealing with people's actual stuff, and to begin with, we didn't have a lot of trust from people. They were asking us questions. Even our early adopters were asking us questions like, well, where does my stuff go? And the obvious implication behind that question is my stuff safe? I have items that have a high monetary value or a high sentimental value. Can I actually trust you with my things? So we realized that this would be absolutely critical for our success. So we invested a lot into security of our operations from day one. And we made our first hires, rather than being technical people, they were customer experience and community management types. And that helped shape a lot of the trust. We invested a lot into design, which also allowed us to enhance our trust as well. And in the end, we ended up making a small dent in a very large $34 billion industry by changing the perceptions and the expectations of people in this industry. So moving on to the next challenge, we had a couple crises that, had we not responded to them in the way that we did, we would have been in a much worse situation right now. The first major challenge was getting kicked out of one of our third-party logistics warehouses. This was actually a very difficult thing for us because we had thousands of boxes stored away. This was the lifeline of our business, and they gave us very little notice. And getting warehouse space is not a very easy thing in the city, in a place like San Francisco especially, because many of us startups here tend to confuse warehouse space with actual hip new office space. So we fortunately had someone working on operations and enhancing our storage situation at that time, so we were able to come up with a temporary situation to tide us over. But the big lesson we learned behind that was, how do we come up with triple redundancy for all of our operations so that we can ensure that security? The next major challenge that we had was we actually ran out of boxes during the exact wrong time. We had a lot of demand, and our suppliers simply couldn't keep up with our customer demand. We have custom manufactured boxes. So what ended up happening is we had a lot of angry customers, and we knew that the only way to make it right was to address every single customer. So my fantastic team went out and called up each individual customer, found cardboard box substitutes for them. We called them up, gave them discounts on things, and we ended up turning around the entire experience for them. On the whole, we turned a lot of otherwise angry customers into not only happy customers, but raving evangelists for us. And after this point in time, we had about 80% of our business coming from word of mouth, which was a really big thing. This actually reminds me of a humorous story that I wanted to tell. We, at one point, had something come up on Reddit where someone said, hey, I'm moving to San Fran, and I heard about this company called Boxbee, and I want to use them, but all the reviews look too good to be true. I'm pretty sure they're fake. Can someone respond to this? And it was getting upvoted like crazy, so I said, oh no, this is going to be a really bad PR thing for us. What do we do? And I ended up clicking through, and I realized there were actually already like 6 to 7 responses unsolicited from our existing customers, some that underwent the crisis that I was just talking about. And they defended us like someone said something bad about their mother. They said things like, hey, I can't believe you would say a thing like that about Boxbee. I've been using them now for the 4th or 5th time, and they're so good for X, Y, and Z reasons. And I scrolled down all the way to the bottom, and someone actually said, and by the way, if you ever want to fit in here, no one calls it San Fran. So I tell you this little humorous anecdote because I'm trying to make a point. We really invest into our customers, and during times of need, they really come back to us, and they're our champions and our defenders. So the final challenge that I want to go over is the subject of competition. There's perhaps many founders in the audience here who have wondered the same question: do I share this idea with the world, or do I keep this a secret so that no one else can know about this until it's completely defensible? I can only speak for Boxbee when I say that we come from an industry that's been around for centuries, but we were the first ones to really productize it and granularize it using technology in a big way. So we were really scared about our idea going out. But although we were contemplating to go on stage last year, we decided to do so anyways because we figured that if no one knew about our idea, we'd be kind of screwed anyways. So lo and behold, the thing that we didn't want to happen, our biggest nightmare, ended up happening after all. We had the invasion of the clones, all coming in their own colors, shapes, sizes, and forms, but identical business models. And we were initially fretting a lot about this because our worst nightmare, in fact, did come true. They were copying us almost exactly. But what we realized in the end is it's really easy to copy something like Boxbee on the front end. After all we're doing is moving boxes from point A to point B. And that's easy to do when you have 1 to 2 orders per day. But if you have like 20 orders per day or more, it's actually a very difficult thing to scale. And we've invested a lot into the things that go underneath the hood that people will never see and probably will never care about unless something goes wrong. And this took a lot of time to develop, and we're continuing to develop it every day, and it's really our edge. Furthermore, we invest a lot into legal, insurance, and operation, and security in our operations to make people feel at ease for using our service. And we also invest a lot into patents. We hold patents on all of our technologies that we currently have, as well as future technologies that we have not unveiled yet. The last big point I want to make about competition is it's really important to know who your competition truly is. We initially thought it was the new companies, but what we realized is our real competition is the existing incumbents and even more silent and deadly killer, and that's existing consumer and business behavior. So going forward in the future, we're going to be expanding in our current markets as well as expanding our operations and making more sophisticated logistics and enhancing our customer experience a little bit more. Some exciting logistical challenges we have ahead of us is providing elastic load balancing for supply chain and deliveries, doing more enhanced storage allocation and fleet optimization, as well as your obligatory robotics in the warehouse and unmanned vehicles in the not too distant future. As a final concluding note here, I'd like to say that the most important lesson we learned over the last year is not is really what business we're really in. We're perceived by the public as a storage company, and our customers, of course, as a storage company, but we acknowledge we're really in the business of making urban living and urban commerce much more efficient, convenient, and accessible. So this means that we're going to have a rollout of several products that aren't even related to storage in the future, but address the needs of urban living and commerce. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be changing the way people think about their stuff, their space, and the quality in their environment, among other things. Thank you very much for having us back on stage this year. It's definitely been a pleasure. Thanks to Jason Kalkanis and his team, and Team Boxbee. Thank you. Bye. So I have to answer questions, don't I?
Hey, I was wondering on a percentage basis, how many people tend to order things on demand, like a box order or pickup, or like a few hours ahead or days in advance? Could you give me any insight on that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question exactly.
Because you guys allow box orders on demand, right?
Yes.
I was wondering how many people would you say on a normal basis order that like immediately, or do it on the weekend or something, like order days in advance?
We have quite a mix. We have a combination of consumers and businesses that use us, and there's all sorts of different use cases among them. And I would say that it just depends on the use case, but for a business, for example, they require very much, they don't require on-demand as much, but someone who needs to move out of a place and have very little time to do so, and they've signed a new lease, it's a very urgent request. So I would say maybe, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say off the top of my head, but 50-50. Yeah.
So let me just run it around.
At the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned there's differences between San Francisco and New York and just marketing in those two areas. Could you go further into that?
Yeah, San Francisco is a very technically inclined audience, and you can notice like billboards around here they're written in code, and 80% of the population here understands if it's written in Ruby or Python. But in New York, you can't do those sort of things. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but what I'm saying is, something that's very technical and on demand doesn't require much advertising in San Francisco because people just get it. It's part of the Uber, TaskRabbit, Lyft sharing economy thing. Like people just get it here. Whereas in a city like New York, which is much more conservative socially and in terms of technology as well, it requires a little more explaining.
Just a quick follow-up. In terms of the channels, are they similar?
They're slightly different.
Do you guys have any plans on expanding the box size? Like if I want to store my surfboard with you guys or snowboard or things like that?
Are you a customer or you just interested?
Just interested.
We get that question a lot, and we do have plans. The key to our success is really standardization and systematization. So irregular size things are difficult to accommodate for us and to be able to scale at the same time. But we're definitely considering it. We're trying to find a happy medium.
I'm just wondering what % of the business today comes from the sharing component versus the storage component, and especially how that will change in the future, given that you mentioned you're actually in the business of delivering efficient urban living solutions.
That's a great question, and the sharing economy, the sharing library app is very new, so we don't have too many data points. It's obviously smaller than our existing business, but I anticipate that catching up in time.
Do you have some more questions? All right.
What are your future plans? Are you planning to franchise or license it to different areas?
I think that franchising is a very good model. We've considered it a lot. It requires getting really down pat what our system is, and it also means that we have less flexibility to come out with new things. So we really want to maintain the control. Control is important for us. So we have to balance that with the attractiveness of a franchise where we can expand pretty quickly.
Do we have any more questions? All right.
Suppose somebody just wanted to use the sharing component and use your library. What kind of pricing are you looking at in the long term for, let's say I'm going camping and I need several boxes of camping supplies delivered. Let's say I was an infrequent user a couple times a year, what kind of pricing would I be looking at?
We're currently conducting studies to determine that, but we don't know the answer to that yet. Right now, it's free for existing Boxbee customers who are storing at least one box with us, and we'll see how that changes.
Hi, I was just kind of curious, kind of what user acquisition channels have been working well for you, and I guess I ask because I'm a customer and I love it, and it's kind of come to me in a couple different ways. So I've seen like Facebook ads for it, boxes delivered to offices for it. So just kind of curious, like, you know, what have you guys found to be successful in terms of user acquisition? I know you mentioned word of mouth.
It's basically all word of mouth.
Yeah.
That's we invest a lot into the experience, and I know this is probably not the answer you want to hear.
No, I was just curious. 'Cause I originally found it through a Facebook ad, actually, but
oh, okay.
Had since
So
seen
you were
it.
the one guy who converted through. Okay.
I guess so, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I think it was like. And then another quick question. I guess based on your talk now, I hadn't really thought of it before, but in terms of, you know, if you needed some sort of heavy, large object delivered within a city, I mean, do you see people using you guys as more of a logistics system to maybe sell a product in the future?
Are you saying working with a company to deliver?
Yeah, it's like, so for example, I have an e-commerce business and I'm really limited in what I can sell based on the weight of that product. But if I could, you know, if I was selling a large product and I just kept some in your warehouse and had you deliver them to my customers, I mean, is that something that's
we do that
feasible?
exact thing today. And
Okay.
You can talk with one of our people if you're interested in that.
Thank you.
All right.
Great. Well, let's give a round of applause for Kristoph Matthews from Boxbee. Thank you so much.